think he's been promoted to be the senior partner at the firm. And you know what that means. He is not working for Republicans. He is not helping Republicans. He's not even listening to Republicans. He is doing the very dirty work of the deep state, and it happens fast and shocking.
I haven't had the chance to highlight chaos agent Marjorie Taylor Greene's latest attempt at turning the Congress upside down. Again.
I filed the motion to vacate today, but it's more of a warning and a pink slip. I respect our conference. I paid all my dues to my conference. I'm a member in good standing, and I do not wish to inflict pain on our conference and to throw the House in chaos. But this is basically a warning, and it's time for us to go through the process, take our time, and find a new Speaker of the House that will stand with Republicans and our Republican majority instead of standing with the Democrats.
I just got to point out, she's calling this guy a worker for the deep state.
We're going to make big radical changes. I've talked to President Trump and all my colleagues about what that first 100 days looks like, and you will see proof right out of the gates. I mean, aggressive changes to the regulatory state, the deep state, the bureaucracy that's turned on the people and weaponized against them.
Here's the important thing of Johnson. He is part of the Trump era. All he's known is the Trump era. He was one of the intellectual architects of pushing back on the stolen election.
You know, the allegations about these voting machines, some of them being rigged with this software by Dominion. Look, there's a lot of merit to that. And when the president says the election is rigged, that's what he's talking about, that the fix was in. But they know that in Georgia, it really was rigged. It was set up for the Biden team to win. When you have, a software system that is used all around the country that is suspect because it came from Hugo Chavez's Venezuela.
He is by far the most conservative speaker in the history of the country.
At least no one can say she just now came up with this great idea that also somehow doubles as a warning to Mike Johnson to let her be the shadow Speaker of the House. Matt Gaetz and them got the taste in their mouth last year when they ran Kevin McCarthy's ass completely out of Congress despite his fealty to Trump. So she mentioned her threats back in mid-January because she already knew that her demands wouldn't simply get adopted when there are 434 other representatives in the House.
In my meeting with him yesterday and many other members of Congress, I let Speaker Johnson know that in no way, shape, and form will I support any type of CR. We aren't continuing Nancy Pelosi's budget, and that if he moves forward with a separate deal trading our border security, weakening H.R. 2 in exchange for $60 billion to Ukraine, I told him yesterday in his office that I would vacate the chair.
But he's not talking to me and other important members in our Republican conference at all about any of the negotiations and any of the plans and exactly what we want to see done. He's failing on the job.
But that was in January, when her hair was on fire over the possibility that Johnson would continue to actually speak to Democrats while trying to negotiate really anything in Congress. Now remember, Mike Johnson was on board and put his face in front of the camera over and over again to reject the border bill that favored Republican plans, all because Trump told him to. It seemed like he was already aware of the threats that their boss posed, so Marge must have wanted to snatch a little bit of that power back. And this is her idea of being measured.
There's not a time limit on this. It doesn't have to be forced and throw the House into chaos. I don't want to put any of our members in a difficult place like we were for 3.5 weeks. But I'm not saying that it won't happen in 2 weeks or it won't happen in a month or who knows when. But I am saying the clock has started. It's time for our conference to choose a new speaker.
It seems like what many Republicans, including MAGA types, are discovering is while they welcomed and promoted the most radical Donald Trump-like people to be part of the MAGA movement, that a couple would go rogue in order to promote themselves in this hierarchy. I mean, Speaker Johnson wouldn't even let Shadow Speaker Greene undo his negotiations.
Listen, this is something people need to understand. He didn't allow us to make amendments to the bill. So we couldn't do anything to take out the funding for full-term abortion. We couldn't do anything to take out the funding for the trans agenda on our children. We couldn't do anything to take out the nearly $700 million to pay for housing and feeding of illegal aliens. We couldn't do any amendments to stop the open border policies of the Biden administration. We couldn't take out the funding for a brand new FBI building after the FBI raided Mar-a-Lago. We couldn't do anything to stop the weaponized government of the DOJ. Mike Johnson forced this bill on the floor, tied Republicans' hands behind our back, and wouldn't let us fix it.
So if it wasn't on her approved list, it has to go. And anyone that isn't willing to bend over backwards to give her a microphone or follow her well thought out plans, like fundraising off of these antics, can just kick rocks.
You know, and also, Rob, let me just talk back to this vacate measure. This was an asinine thing pushed forth by Matt Gaetz because he had a rift with McCarthy. And then he did also, just sadly enough, what I just got a text not 30 minutes ago from Marjorie saying, I'm wanting to raise money on this. Matt Gaetz raised money the whole week or the whole time he was creating chaos. This is not what it's supposed to be. This is not what adults in the room do.
It's all making a little bit more sense now. Maybe the money that she and Gaetz raised off of tossing McCarthy out was running dry, and with Speaker Johnson breaking the first rule of MAGA by speaking to Democrats, she sees an opening to both promote herself and ask a couple of suckers, what's in your wallet? But while she's got him on the clock, and if she actually pulls the trigger to run him out, she might have forgotten to consider who may take his place, and if it's even possible to get any better than a guy that follows Trump like a lapdog.
There are also concerns, Jake, that if there is a push to oust Mike Johnson, who would only be the second person ousted ever as Speaker of the House through a vote on the floor, that Democrats could work with moderate Republicans and move forward a more moderate Speaker. Greene pushed back against that contention. She said, I don't think we can get any more moderate than Mike Johnson. She said there's not even any daylight between him and Nancy Pelosi at this point. He's literally turned into Mitch McConnell's twin and worse.
I'm sorry, I'm just trying to figure out how Johnson is like both Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell, because nothing she says makes any sense. But that's the type of person that thrives in this Republican Party. The only reason that her frenemy, Lauren Boebert, is on the ropes is because she had consecutive embarrassing stories to surface, from her Beetlejuice date to her kid getting arrested on felony charges. But if you're just a rabid, self-serving congressperson that only looks to disrupt the House, you last much longer. You just have to dismiss any and all consequences for your actions. And Marge learned that lesson well from their chosen one, Donald Trump.
Let me ask you about the politics of this, because the criticism here is that if a motion to vacate ever came, that you could have Democrats all voting for Hakeem Jeffries, and you've got some rhinos, lots of them, maybe at least a handful. If they side with Democrats, you have Hakeem Jeffries as Speaker of the House. That's the danger.
It's not Marjorie Taylor Greene that is saying the inconvenient truth and forcing everyone to wake up and realize Republican voters are done with us doing this kind of crap that we did last week. And they are fed up with speakers of the House and Republicans that go out and campaign and make all these promises and then turn around and stab their voters in the back, because that's what Mike Johnson did on Friday. And that's what he led our conference to do on Friday. I am not going to be responsible for Hakeem Jeffries being Speaker of the House. I am not going to be responsible for a Democrat majority taking over our Republican majority. That lies squarely on the shoulders of these Republicans that are leaving early because they don't have the intestinal fortitude to handle the real fight and the responsibility that comes with leadership at the end of our republic, when our country is nearly destroyed and when our Constitution is being rammed through a paper shredder. So no one is going to blame that on me.